And I think there's a snobbishness with reading books. They are a bit outdated. They're a little bit like playing the spoons and tap dancing and the theatre. They were good once, but things have moved on.
The head's not quite on the right place. That's his little issue that he's got to work on for the moment.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Well, that's you, because you never won anything.
Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, a podcast brought to you by Pro14 Rugby, where we endeavour to deliver half-baked opinions served up as real rugby analysis. My name is Andy McGeady, and this week we have Dean Budd. How are you? Very
good. Namaste. I'm my extreme boredom of lockdown. I've taken up yoga, so I'm just on a path to higher being at the moment. So no, I'm just trying to loosen up the old hips. But yeah, I've been doing yoga every day, so it's given me something to do in my extreme boredom. That's about all I can offer.
And now to lift us up a little bit, Mr. Ciaran Frawley, how are you?
Hang on now. I'm in a state of doom and gloom here in South Wales with our rugby performances. The weather's bad. Yeah, I've struggled this week. I'm on a bit of a highs and lows. You know, I've got some rugby. I've got some great commentary work, and I get right up for that, and I get really excited. And then I find myself then back in sort of what Truman Show stuff, you know, where you're just doing Groundhog Day things. Then I'm up again for tonight under the sticks because I'm like, yes, I can meet the boys and get stuck into Paul Williams, and he's not here.
He's not here because that down there, you know, Paul Williams didn't dye his beard or do anything like that again. It's Mr. Mark Palmer from the Sunday Times. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Great to be here as always.
It's been a while. It's good to have you back. In the background, we have super producer Adam Redmond pulling the strings as always. It's good to see some regulars in already. Hello, Michael Jenkins. Hello, Ian Gilbert, Harley Worthy, Mauro DeMarco, James O'Brien, and Seb Negri. Already in. Any tips from the yoga sessions, Dino?
He could really benefit loosen up those big hips of his. I'll tell you that much. I'll give him. Maybe I'll put up a little video for the fan base tomorrow, just to
that'll be good.
Really show you what a battered old rugby player looks like.
We'll have a yoga off, a sponsored yoga off, and I'm not watching. What are we doing tonight? We've got a good rundown here. First one is the lack of fans starting to impact games. Anyone who watched Ireland versus Wales, it was missing something. Missing a couple of things, I'd say. England and Scotland, a lot of plus points in that game. We're going to talk about Italy. We're going to talk about Scotland. A lot going on there, and a lot that both teams will take out of it. So we'll be leaning on Dean and leaning on Mark for that one. I'm wearing an All Blacks jersey. I don't often get to pity wear All Blacks clothing. Argentina, Los Pumas. Oh man, we all love that, especially those of us who got to watch back. Holley's Heroes, the few people there we'll spend some time on later on from the Guinness PRO14 action from the weekend. Are there bright little sparks in Wales? Maybe. If you look outside the Test Arena, Cardiff Blues, perhaps looking good. Scarlets got a very good away win in Connacht. And Mark Palmer will be visiting again for the Scots Watch. We might be very careful what we say about Edinburgh's result in Dublin and also talk about Glasgow. But talk to us. Get your comments and questions in during the show. So there's a good few regulars here. Harley Worthy, yes. I'm going to hold my hands up here to start the show because I was really taking the mick about that game, and I was slagging off Cardiff. And I thought the pitch looked a little sloppy for a plastic pitch, and it should have done because it wasn't a plastic pitch. The game was in Newport. I'm sorry, all the Cardiff people. I deserved everything I got for that one.
You donut.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad.
It's almost as bad as saying, you know, about Limerick being Dublin.
Right, yeah.
Cardiff and Newport,
that
you know,
bad.
Ding.
Yeah, it was bad. Right, here we go. Straight into the Autumn Nations Cup. The one thing we didn't have time to put into that before we went live, because the news has only just come out, is that Fiji are now have another game cancelled. So we lost the Fiji-France game. We now have lost the Fiji-Italy game. That's perhaps not the biggest news about the announcement, because we're kind of getting used to this. There are games that are going to be cancelled, and there's not much we can do about it. This is the nature of the season we are in due to COVID-19. The big news was 29 positive cases from the Fiji camp, which is an extraordinary number. Mark, from the media landscape, when you saw that release come in, what was your reaction?
Well, exactly that. The scale of it is horrifying, really, isn't it? It's we've seen a couple of big numbers in England towards the end of last season, as it was now, but that takes it to a whole new level. And I think that there was probably a sense after what happened with the France game that this one they'd be struggling to get this one away. But for it to be so, for 29 people to be now have gone down is quite remarkable. And they're supposed to be at Murrayfield a week on Saturday, which again you'd now think that has to be a very, very long odds on that. So it could be that this great opportunity that would have been for Fiji to play in this tournament is going to come and go without anything, without us seeing them at all.
Yeah, it would be a real shame. I mean, Dean, if you're a player who's perhaps looking forward to playing that game, you're happy it's called off now. If you're Italy.
Yeah, I mean, going through cancellations through the World Cup and then even through the start of COVID, getting cancelled on a Thursday or a Friday even before the game is just the worst thing, because you just feel like all that prep's just throwing down the gurgler a little bit. But I mean, Italy would have loved to play it, but I'd say there's a few boys there that are happy they don't have 130 kilo wingers like Nadolo steaming down their channel and having a tackle them. I mean, Fiji's such a unpredictable beast, and if they get it right, it can be pretty scary. No one's going to not want to play a game, but I mean, there's certainly going to be a few sighs, I'd say, of relief amongst some of the boys.
It's a real pity, man. I was looking forward to that game, but I'm not sure there's much more we can add to this conversation other than it's happened. It was a bit of a wow, and hopefully we get to see Fiji during this Autumn Nations Cup, but we'll see, because we need some entertainment from some places. We had entertainment in some places, definitely not
coming from
Lansdowne Road with Ireland and Wales. Sean, you watched this, I'm assuming, like the rest of us fortunate souls.
I had to watch it back as well.
Yeah. Am I going too far? Like, am I laid it on too thick? It didn't seem very good.
No. It's not good, purely because it's not like we're getting blown away by a much better team, because there were times where Ireland should have scored more points. Let's face it. And Scotland did a job on us, but really, 14-11 was it, something like that. You would expect to beat Scotland at home with the guys on the team sheet. Unfortunately, the game's not played on the team sheet. And there's something wrong, clearly. I know things are going awry in a technical sense. So the set piece is dreadful, which really surprises me. I coached 7 years with Jonathan Humphreys. Very technical, demands high standards, great bloke. Players play for him, I can guarantee that. It's just there's something missing. Whether it's selection, there's a couple of wrong boys in there, but Buddy, you will have seen the set piece. The line now, it's like you can't just say, the hooker's overthrowing. Because there's overthrows, underthrows, missed lifts, missed calls, missed times. There's an array of errors there. And the scrum, so we've selected Rhys Carey, yanked him off before half-time because he's getting a potential yellow card. That could undermine further performance. But, if you haven't got any front foot ball, then we're not seeing any attack in shape. So we don't really know what it is they're working on, because nothing's coming to fruition. Add to that the defence issues, which are well documented, and a team like Ireland are going to exploit that. So, we've got real problems. And how quick can it turn around? God, we were number 1 in the world. We were semi-final, and we were that close really to just hanging on and sneaking a win in the semi-final of the World Cup. It's unbelievable.
It's really interesting to me that you've jumped straight into what are the technical problems from the Wales point of view. And I'm Irish, and I was sitting here going, that's a thumping win, and it was still crap. Like it wasn't a good spectacle, and that's the thing where there can be games where one team plays badly, but you still actually get a sense of enjoyment from watching the game, and that's the thing that I was trying to put my finger on watching it. And we talked a little bit, the crowds aspect of it. I mean, Mark, is this something that there's some games that the lack of crowd really just kicks in?
Absolutely, and I think it's probably a testament and a real credit to all the teams so far that they have been able to create their own energy, and it hasn't been as big an issue as we perhaps expected after lockdown. But I agree with you on Friday, there definitely was something missing there. I'd kind of expected it to be the case actually in Llanelli for the Wales-Scotland game a couple of weeks previous, but it did feel like a proper test summer match to me. Well, certainly because we won, but there wasn't that same. The absence wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. But certainly in Dublin, there just didn't seem to be an energy about either side. Even though Ireland won comfortably, it just seemed that same kind of thrust that you'd expect wasn't quite there.
Can I just go back to Sean on one point there, though? Because you've done like lots and lots of commentary. What's it like when you're at the ground on games, and all you're hearing are the player's voice and the other staff as part of the traveling parties? It must be very, very different, and we don't get that as much on all the TV feeds because they are trying to give us extra noise.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two ways you can go, and you can either sort of realize that there's nobody there, go within your shell and think this is strange, and I've heard a few commentators, second voices doing that. Whereas I get up for the game, you have big cans on where I like to turn up my co-commentators so it feels like an atmosphere. I turn up the director and the producer so I feel like I got an atmosphere from the truck, and then whatever crowd noise is, and it's like canned laughter really, but I keep that on as well, so I feel like I'm in the moment. I genuinely watch the game live and on the monitor, mostly on the monitor if you're in Edinburgh because of the fog, but I genuinely watch both and give as much as I can and be descriptive as I can. The weird thing, to answer your question, is, let's say I go down to pitch side at halftime, I take my cans off. Oh my God, that's weird. It's because it's just like dead, and you think to yourself, well, whoever's in you has been listening to me rant on, but I can imagine then what it's like for the players. The clubs I play for, there was very few people watching, so I probably experienced it. But Dean, if you're used to, in an international where there's crowd participation, it must be really hard.
Yeah, I kind of feel I kind of want to retract my statements. I think lockdown, someone wrote in and asked a question about crowds and does it affect the game, and I was like, no. When you're out there, like you're in your own little bubble, and you're fine. Sometimes you'll hear it and it'll give you a little extra 5-10%, but generally don't hear it and you're just in the game. But yeah, I'd go as far as saying, you even now, just the emptiness. I think you'd even feel the warmth of the crowd, like especially like a warm Principality Stadium full of people. Like it's like a summer's day when you're playing in there in some of those Six Nations games. Just all the body heat and all the flames and everything going on. So I think I'll retract massively my statement from 3 months ago saying, don't really think it's anything, because I think it's massive. And following on to Italy, talk about their technical aspect later, but I think they've been one of the best teams I've seen at creating a little bit of environment. A little bit of atmosphere on the field. I think just seeing them celebrate what would seem to a lot of people silly little wins, winning scrums and little penalties, and all along the way you see the boys cheering and fist pumping and screaming like they've won a World Cup, literally for a little knock on. And I think that's been really helpful in Italy, creating a lot of pressure on teams in the first 40 minutes of the previous two games. I think, and that's to their advantage at this stage.
Do you know what? And the one thing that I refer to on this, yet another Deanbird retraction. Only one thing I referred to. Do you remember Wales beat England 30 points to 3 to scupper Stu Lancaster's Championship Grand Slam, and Wales won it. Remember Alex Cuthbert scored 2 tries? I was in the stadium that day, right? And I can tell you now, I promise you, the game was won at the anthem. It was won at the anthem. It was the most amazing atmosphere. It lifted the players, and I could see the England boys in the warm-up thinking, well, I've never played anything like this. And I think there was something like 6 or 7 guys who'd never played at the Millennium Stadium. It was the difference. So, I'm not saying it would change Wales' performance at the moment, but it would have been nice for something like Alan Wynne to have his record in front of a crowd.
Yeah, it would be. And there's been some great, big games over the years as well. Like, I could think back Ireland versus England at Croke Park. I mean, people talk about that day and the way that, I suppose, both the way that the Irish anthem was sung and also the respect that was shown for God Save the Queen. I think back to a famous one with the teams going out for the first Leinster-Munster Heineken Cup semi-final at the old Lansdowne Road, when Leinster nominally at home and the place was red. And that had to have impacted the players coming out on that day, going like, hold on, this is supposed to be our game. But it's a weird thing. You can never know. Michael Jenkins he's come in with a comment here. The games are just not the same anymore. The crowds make the game. There's some very creative TV directorship going on at the moment to try and give us something a little bit better. It's not always perfect. We do miss having the crowds, and by God, I miss going to games. But we've been dwelling on this for a while. We'll come back around to some of the points from the Ireland game when we talk about the England game to come. Dean, we'll go to you first for the Italy-Scotland match, because for the first half, things were looking very, very nice for Italian rugby.
Yeah, I became, over the last few weeks, you've seen my skepticism of the direction of Italy rugby. I was a believer for 50, 60 minutes there. I was even, a little bit of hope that they could have held on right to the end. I thought they just looked a lot more complete and a lot more in control than what I've seen in the past. And I think, what I touched on about the atmosphere they're creating in their own game, I think I just saw Scotland a little bit rattled at the start of that game, very much like England was. And I kind of thought to myself, you know what, I don't quite feel like Scotland's quite got the firepower England's got. And so maybe, Italy's a real chance to carry on with this game, even if it's a scrappy win. They were pretty damn good on Saturday.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Mark, as a writer about all things Scottish rugby, you probably had one part of a column written in your head by the time it got to half time, and then things changed a little bit for the better.
They did, and I think Dean's absolutely right. I think Italy, probably for an hour, were really good and certainly worthy of the advantage. Some really good performances in that front five, particularly Garbisi, I thought played really well. And I think that's only his third game, and he's only played 3 games for Benetton up to this point as well. So a guy who's really learning on the job and doing it well. But it was interesting to see Franco Smith saying that he felt they'd kind of started playing the scoreboard rather than thinking about how they could affect what was actually happening in those last 20 minutes. They started thinking of the big picture. We've got a game that we can win here. What would that mean? Rather than doing all the good things that they had been up to that point. And certainly kind of Scotland did take advantage of it in the last 20. I think they looked probably that bit fitter as well, Scotland, which I know is has been a recurring theme with Italy in the last quarter of games. And yeah, they did just enough to win in the end.
So Sean, we talked about Garbisi a few weeks ago. We are seeing someone who is young. He's very talented. He's got form in the youth levels. Is this a guy who maybe Italy really can build on? And not talking about potential here anymore. We're actually seeing him in real test matches.
Well, I hope so, because it's what's needed, isn't it? The tried and trusted, always the go-to guys. The Carlo Canas of this world. I think they needed something fresh, but it would need to be of the right ilk. So we've talked about Rizzi as well before, Zebra, who's quite mercurial, talented, but can you rely on him, in a game of that magnitude, which is going to be close towards the end? No. Garbisi, speaking of Dean, He seems to have a good head on him. I watched him at 20s level. He took it all in his stride, and he seems to be doing that now. So that augurs really well. When you look at something like a Sexton, a Dan Biggar, a Farrell, a George Ford, the guys who are stepping up, Finn Russell, they have a maturity about them, and you need that sort of leadership, if you like, to play 10 in international rugby. So it augurs really well. Add to that, as you say, he's really talented. So I'm really, really hopeful, and they can build a team around him then, because it was just so nice to see them so competitive. And I thought for large periods against England, they were competitive as well. So, let's go on, Izuri.
So continue on the Garbisi train. Mark, you did an interview with him recently.
I did, yeah, before the England game. So yeah, he just made his debut the previous week against Ireland, and what a level-headed guy! Really impressive in terms of his self-awareness, his kind of confidence, just a real impressive head on his shoulders. He was big on wanting to be unpredictable, but in a kind of good way, not mercurial. Just kind of not being one type of standoff. He was wanting to vary his kick pass run game. Very clear about who he looks up to and why. I just came away from the conversation very kind of enthused for their prospects there, because I think is it the 17th or 18th guy that they've tried there in the year since Dominguez retired, and there's been some pretty average customers amongst those. And finally, it looks like they've got somebody who might be the real deal. And to Sean's point, Canna playing as that kind of second guy outside him, I think again worked well on Saturday. He's then got the right foot, left foot kicking option, and he also, you could see him sort of talking him through the game as well, which is maybe a good way of using Canna and getting the most out of him as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. I like that Canna there, that influence there. But there's one person I want to get to, right? It was just such a moment in the second half when in one 3-second period, Italy conceded a try under the post, and Jake Pelledri was writhing in agony holding his knee. It was just, I was looking at that and going, oh, he is screwed. And we don't know what the details of the injury is. It's a knee and it's bad. That's all we know, Dean. But there's a guy you can really build a pack around.
Yeah, that's the biggest loss for Italy. I don't know the exact diagnosis of it all, but I think it's going to be a lengthy one out for him, and that is just the biggest loss for them. He's their go-to for guaranteed front foot ball and creating magic out of nothing sometimes. So huge loss. Thankfully, there's Negri and Brahm staying there, and Johan Mayer, when he's come on, has looked really good in the loose. I think he absolutely dispatched Johnny Gray with a big palm off. So there's some good guys, hopefully, to fill that spot. He's going to be massively missed. It's a sad one.
Well, yeah. Mark, before we leave this game and move on, what else would you take out from the Scotland point of view? Because, they were going in without the first two fly halves, which is not a small thing. So with Weir in place, wearing old school Preds and a massive Barnett, right, which I was very impressed by. What else would you take out of this game if you're a Scotland fan?
The ability to kind of dog out a win, which has been something that has really troubled Scotland for many years, and certainly in this current iteration where it's been, so much talk about playing the fastest rugby in the world, all the things they can do in attack, but there's been a real question mark over have they got that sort of pragmatic game to go to as well. And it's certainly since the World Cup, there's been a real change in emphasis on the pillars of defence and set piece and breakdown, and those three things have really come through strongly, both in the Wales win and again on Saturday, I thought. So, and again, that was they had injury issues very early on in the Italy game as well. They lose two pillars of scrum and Jamie Ritchie and Rory Sutherland, but again found a way around it, which hasn't always been the case.
There was one step too far, and I don't know if you saw it. Paul O'Connell named his British Lions 15 for the weekend.
No,
Duncan Weir was 10. He's taking some, no disrespect to Duncan Weir, but Paulie's taking some stick, I think, on that one.
I'm not sure Duncan Weir would pick Duncan Weir.
With that hairdo, he's a sure bet for me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Wales play Georgia next. Commenting from James O'Brien. If Georgia continued to get destroyed in the remainder of the autumn games, does that put an end to the relegation question for the Six
God, I hope so.
Nations?
It's a great question, isn't it? Because it probably, James isn't inciting anything other than, look, let's put this to bed. He's not saying, look, let's go to that discussion again. I think what it's shown, the history has shown, it takes a long time to get up to speed, doesn't it? It took France years and years when they came into the Five Nations, and Italy, we're starting to see something, and we're talking about it now. And as Georgia came in now, they're nowhere near ready, are they? England, it was a training session. They never looked like scoring. I mean, I sincerely hope Wales dispatch him on the weekend. I'm really worried because they're going to make lots of changes, and it's a shot to nothing, really. They're going to put some lambs out of the slaughter, and but I still think we'll win. And it's not really a characteristic of what a real Six Nations would be. If it came around to February, March, and Wales were playing them in Cardiff, they'd put 50, 60 points on them, wouldn't they? Let's face facts. So I hope it does. I hope it does, because we need a bit of time. However, we need to develop the game as well. And you've got Georgia. I got friends who are coaching Romania, who are coaching Russia. There's Japan who come up the rails at a brilliant World Cup. There's that tier of world rugby that we want to improve. And that's important as well, because it makes the Italys of this world make sure that they're keeping their head above the rest. Says the guy whose nation is now ranked 9th in the world.
I'm also thinking back, the 2019 World Cup is not long ago. Japan are already down good. Scotland play France on Sunday. Mark, I'm looking here. France are 7-point favourites in Scotland. What do we think about that?
It's probably just about right. I mean, Scotland have actually won the last 4 games at Murrayfield against them, which is and probably deserved winners on each occasion. The scripts maybe changed slightly last week when, obviously they were supposed to be giving all the big boys a rest this weekend, and then after the Fiji game went, suddenly they're all back in, although they have since lost Tamik to injury, and they only now have Jalibert and Carbonell to come in, so real poor quality replacements there. So I think probably a narrow French win is on the cards, but I think Scotland will not go in with any kind of fear or anything like that.
Can we talk about England against Ireland? I want to.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, we talked about how kind of not exciting these Irish games, the Irish game was, but I've seen that same Ireland from Italy. The first game they played the same against France. They're grinding out good wins and winning, but I don't see any excitement from them. I don't see them really going that close to England. I think England should wrap it up pretty easy, I'd say.
I made a comment to my mates watching the game on Saturday. I felt if Leinster had played Wales Saturday, they would have put 50 points on us.
That's probably not utterly outrageous.
It's not. It's not.
Not like complete mad outrageous.
It's not mad. The point I'm making is Leinster are a well-oiled, well-drilled team. They know their roles. They've got guys that come off the bench, a lot of depth. I think Ireland tend to lose their way a little bit in championship. It's why they struggle at a World Cup, isn't it? I mean, will the real Ireland turn up? And that's what I'm hoping to see on Saturday. I really am. I like the fact that James Ryan's going to be captain. I'm gutted for Henshaw. I think he's been playing really well, club and country. And it's a chance to see somebody else at 10. But you look at England, they've been in second gear, really have. And I'm just hoping that Ireland give them such a game on the weekend, because if England win in second gear again, what's the next week after?
Wales in first gear.
So I'm gonna just pause this for a second, because I gave you some homework and I'll come back to it here. Stephen Sheridan says, I hope there's Guinness in that mug. Sean, that was feckin' shameless. You plug in there.
It's product placement. I mean, come on.
It is. And
unfortunately it's tea.
I've now got a poke from from backstage saying that if you, I want to get this right, I'm ashamed. if you include pints in your profile pictures, you might
got a
get
better chance.
a little better chance of going up on screen.
Ah, comedy gold. That is brilliant.
I hate myself for that. Right. You brought it up. James Ryan's going to captain Ireland. It's been announced today. A very experienced 24-year-old lock. A very good 24-year-old lock. So it's been on the cards for a while. He's been captain at every level he's played at. He stood in as captain after Jonathan Sexton went off, even though like Peter O'Mahony was doing a lot of calling, but that's what Peter O'Mahony does. So your homework was who was the last person from your country to captain their side at 24 or younger? So I'll go first. So the last one from Ireland we had Brian O'Driscoll, Peter O'Mahony, Paul O'Connell, and Keith Wood. Right, that's the wrong order. Right, but there's some very, very big hitters. Last one for England, Johnny Wilkinson. Before that, you have to go all the way back to Will Carling. Now, Mark Palmer, Scotland.
I'm going to. This is not going to work, and I can say it very much from the first foot. But Grant Gilchrist, when he was 24, must have been because it was 6 years ago, was selected to be Vern Cotter's first Scotland captain, and then got injured, so didn't actually do it. I'm struggling to think before that or since, but I know you're going to enlighten me right now.
No, you're right, because he did it twice. Still aged 24.
There you go, and that option potentially, yeah.
And before that was Gregor Townsend, all the way back to 96. So not often in Scotland. Wales.
Struggling. I think Sam was pretty young. Sam Warburton, but I don't think he was as young as 24.
He was. Someone's done it since.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Scott Williams.
Well, Captain Wales, did he?
Yeah, there you go. This is a good one. Right, Italy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Who do you reckon?
I can't even remember before. I've been racking my brains before Parise. Maybe
there's only one since Parise.
The captain after Parise was Quinton Gildenheiser. He was too old. I don't know. Tronky, the halfback. Oh,
Geraldini. So he did it while Parise was playing.
Okay.
There you go. Right, we're now going back to exciting things, because I love stuff like that. I think England and Ireland should be a good occasion, but we're missing fans, which is still a pity. Wales, Georgia, we've covered. Scotland, France, we've covered. We are now out of Autumn Nations Cup territory and into Guinness PRO14 territory. Speaking of captains.
Got someone up to sleep.
Adam.
Pablo, you're the captain. What we need to see is some leadership from you, okay? What we don't need you to do is come and push players after the whistle, okay?
Okay, I can't see a guy kick in the face of one of my men.
Okay.
It's not respect.
Yeah.
I'm bringing my country.
I understand that,
respect.
but let us deal with it. We don't need you as the captain coming in. Let's show some leadership.
Oh, how good was that game? How good was that game?
How good was that comment? Angus Gardner had the nerve to say, I need some leadership here.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have come back with anything better. It wasn't a riposte what he was going to say it, whatever. And he meant it, didn't he? You know, the guy leads from the front. You've got that look at the hacker, which is one thing, you know, but that's leadership for me. And I got up to watch it, and I just absolutely enjoyed it from start to finish. You know, it's just so good for World Rugby, isn't it? It's, you know, to see those fans at the end and the players and Ledesma weeping and crying. We even got a smile out of Michael Checker, for goodness sake. Unbelievable.
There was a little look right. I think it was after the Sanchez penalty to put the 3 scores up, and there was a little look between Checker and Ledesma that was captured on camera in the booth, and it was just this little sideways thing of going, "Yep." It was sweet. I mean, Dean, what it was like for you watching it?
No, yeah, I loved it. honestly. To see. I mean, I kind of see myself a little bit as an Italian underdog now. So for any underdog to get up and for a team that's never beat the All Blacks to finally win, to see that emotion, to see the tears, just that's what the game is massively about. I'd say, well, I'm not going to say all Kiwi fans would agree, but a lot of them would agree that it's just awesome to see that kind of joy back in rugby, and it's so good for the game of rugby. It's a massive weekend of wins that.
And friend of the show, Andrew Swain, who was on a couple of weeks ago, it was his debut commentary. His debut test commentary, and he called Argentina beating New Zealand. Oh man, that must have been sweet.
It's amazing. I've commentated with Swain out in albeit the 20s World Cup, but this was his first international first caller role. I think he was doing it with George Gregan and Andrew Mertens.
Yeah,
just to be in their company and to commentate there. And he's well prepped, but he's just got a lovely way with words, and flow to it. And he's not, he's got no ego with him, Swainy. Our listeners who listen to him on the show, he's a brilliant bloke, ex-second row for Brothers in Queensland. And he was chuffed because he texted us on our WhatsApp group, didn't he? Boys, my first cap. He was delighted, and what a game to do, eh?
He's the curse. Maybe we have to give him a word. We can't. I'm happy, but it can't happen every weekend.
When was the last time they lost you in the bounce?
I think the stat was like 2014 or maybe even before. It came out during the week. Like it's impossible that it'll happen because it hasn't happened for so
2011
long.
Or something like that. Like it's a good long time. Yeah. But like Mark, we kind of needed this. We needed pure, unbridled. Oh my God, this is happening. This is incredible.
Absolutely, that joy. And for me, it was great to see Argentina. They've gone back to being what makes Argentina great, that passion, that real fervour, the enjoyment, the pride that they take. And, under Daniel Arcadi, the previous coach, they seem to have kind of gone away from that. They were talking about trying to make the game more expansive, and, they lost a lot in the set piece and breakdown, but they've gone back to what the real fundamentals of what made them such a great rugby nation. And, fantastic to see it bearing fruit like that.
Is there any more surprises before I move on to Guinness PRO14? Maybe. No. Okay, here we go. Scarlets really good away win in Galway. Munster made decent work of Ospreys. In fact, that could have been a lot worse. We'll get to that for Ospreys. Thumping win away at Zebre for Ulster. Good win for the Blues. Or Cardiff Blues, or Cardiff. We're not going back to last week against Benetton. And Leinster handed Edinburgh their tickets home with 50 points to 10. So there's a lot of points scored this week. We probably should go. We've talked a lot about how bad Wales have been at test level. Let's talk about some good things. That was a good win for Scarlets, Sean.
Yeah, it was a good win under a bit of pressure. They haven't really held themselves up there with some disappointing performances. They'd only scored 4 tries in 5 games, which is not like what you've come to expect from the Scarlets. So they were under a bit of pressure there, and that's not an easy game, is it? I know Connacht missed the previous week, but the one before that, they did a real job on Edinburgh up in Murrayfield. So, to go there and win, pretty emphatically, was a massive shot in the arm because they've lost a lot of players to international camp. And I think somebody like Johnny McNicholl coming back sort of sparked them. He looks really fit and strong to me, a little out the back there for Ryan Combia, who's a young, talented winger who does know where the line is. And McNicholl, when he's in this mood, he's the sort of player Wales need. And what the Scarlets recognise, they're kind of quite tight off scrums. You can see this out the side door, Combia with a lovely finish. But McNicholl can be the sort of spark that makes other players play. He's the sort of player you need, during these times when you've got a lot of young players. He's a big personality and he does things. He makes things happen. Unfortunately for the Scarlets, he's just been called up into Wayne Pivac's international squad. So, but that's a good thing. That's what the regions are there to do. But I thought he was pretty good this weekend.
Yeah. So the other side of that was then the Munster Ospreys game.
I watched this one and I thought it was going to be a thumping. I really did. And if you're a Munster fan, you'd be forgiven if you were a little bit frustrated that they just didn't go on and pummel them. And but credit to the Ospreys, they stuck in there, and Munster just gave them a little bit too much room on the outside. And they got two guys who feature in my Holley heroes this week, Matt Protheroe, who moved to fullback, and Luke Morgan on the wing. Now, Luke Morgan has been around a long time, a sevens player, but this boy Protheroe on the ball now, Hanno Dirksen gets the ball to him really early because he knows why. Now, this guy's a bit of a throwback. He's only a kid, right? But the way he runs with the ball and steps, dare I say, it's a little bit Shane-like. He's got a lovely balanced run, a step, he glides across the floor, and, Luke Morgan responds from him. Look, he knows what he's doing. How easy does he beat defenders? Ball back in two hands, sort of shaking his shoulders. Nice early ball because he knows Luke has got the pace. And, Luke is responding. The Ospreys need these sort of players. They haven't had these sort of tricky, quick, fleet of foot players to break the line for a long time, maybe since Shane. And Protheroe, we mentioned him last week, has been a breath of fresh air. But, as an axis and a corner, they caused Munster real problems, not just that try, but, in other facets of the game. So it's nice to see young talent like that, isn't it?
It is, but I'm really aware that these two players have been picked out while getting absolutely mullered, because 38-22 sounds like a game which might have been even for a while. It wasn't. It wasn't. They were absolutely minced, and there was one man from Munster that really, really did a lot of mincing.
Yeah, I picked these two players out because, as you say, in adversity, they shone. See Luke Morgan getting back, but look at Protheroe now. First instinct is to beat the man and then go put Luke Morgan away, and so it's a spark. I'm putting it in there because we haven't seen this from an Ospreys team. Look, it just beats the guy, but the damage was done. And Munster, for me, I've commentated on them live this year. I've watched them every game. They've been pretty insatiable. I think they're very improved. And one guy who got a hat-trick of tries, he's sort of a little bit for non-Munster fans, has come out of nowhere. Is the number 8, Gavin Coombes. He's a little bit of a throwback, dare I say. He's not a CJ Stander. He's more of a Dean Richards character, Love a little lift. He's very skillful, but he's a big young man. That's not him scoring. He gave the lift pass, but here he is barging over. He gets over 2 or 3 guys. Look at this: 1, 2, 3 Ospreys, and there's a prop in that. Hanno Dirksen's no slouch. He's a big man. He knows where the line is, and he's got a little bit of a turn of pace. Look at the hips on him. This is not a small man. This to me looks like potential international quality. Lovely little pick and arc, and brings Farrell on. Casey had another good game at 9, and I quite liked his last try because it showed a relationship between Casey and Coombes, the 8. They obviously played together before Munster. They might have played in Ireland 20s together, but you'll see it'll come from a free kick in a scrum, and Casey knows exactly what to do. So here it comes. There's a free kick. He throws the ball straight to Coombes. There's that latch on, drive over. It's as easy as that. Look at Casey. He knows straight away. Throws it to him. Tap, go, latch on. Easy as that. He was immense. I think he was man of the match. And Donahue was good at 6 from captain. Casey was good at 9. And you throw Dale Andy to boot in there. And Munster just got too much for the Ospreys.
Yeah, they had. And it was looking very grim, and it was as if Munster, just all of them, took the foot off the gas in the last 20 and saved a lot of blushes. But yeah, I think it's a fairly good summary. Cardiff beaten Benetton 22-5. I watched a lot of this game, and it was definitely played in Newport, not Cardiff. Dean, I was surprised that Benetton couldn't pull this one back because it was tight for a long time.
Tight, but yeah, they just struggled to really fire any real shots. I mean, it was talked about. Sean and the commentary team spoke loads about the size of the Benetton pack, and maybe they've got the edge and can and do to Cardiff what essentially Cardiff did to Benetton. They bullied them up, and their Cardiff Moors were going over, scoring tries. Apart from the one line break where Montiuani's gone through and given an offload which was spilt, they just didn't offer anything else in attack. And Cardiff looked solid. They didn't look like they were going to let anyone through. I know Sean's going to talk about the winger, who's an absolute beast of a man, scoring his try. But that try just really sealed up the game for Cardiff, and I thought Cardiff looked pretty solid.
I thought Benetton were disappointing second half. I thought Keatley went missing, and I thought Callum Brayley was left to do a lot of the kicking from the base, but he didn't deal with the wind very well. Callum, the Blues had all the bases covered there, and they couldn't really get into the Blues 22. The one time that they did, of course, they scored with the driving maul, and you sort of thought, oh, hello, they've got the recipe here. But to their credit, I thought the Blues, they defended well. They defended the maul well, didn't they? They really did their homework, and credit Tom Smith, young coach, forwards coach there for the Blues.
Well, the Benetton maul used to be just such a weapon for us. I remember Hami Faiu was scoring hat-tricks week in, week out just because the maul was going over that often. And it just hasn't fired for this season, that's for sure. And yeah, full credit to Cardiff for closing that down. But yeah, how strong was that wind? I know we didn't have Paul's weather meter there, but it looked strong.
It was a shock. I mean, it was that misty rain and a swirling wind, predominantly with the Blues in the second half. So they went into half time having been playing into that wind. I think it was 8-0, and that probably was the game then. The tries at the end, it was a great finish by Owen Lane, and the last one was Sealer. But this guy coming in, he hardly touched the ball. So to come in and give a step like this, showed strength to stay on his feet. It was a lovely finish. It was lovely there watching it live. And
if you're the cover tackler watching a man that big on a pitch like that do a step like that, you're just going to forget about it. Forget about it.
He is a monster. I saw
a big dude.
Mauro Di Marco has just written that Lamaro's come back. He'd been out with an ACL operation for almost a year. It was massive to see him back. He was big on the tackle. The Benetton boys put in some really big shots actually there in that second half. All to kind of, unfortunately, not avail to kind of create any momentum and turnovers. But it's good to see. He'll be, well, who knows if he'll be straight in there, but he's a name for the future for Italian rugby in the loose forwards.
And then we move on to Dublin. Mark, would you have enjoyed interviewing Richard Cockrell after that game?
I would certainly have not. No. After a couple of decent wins, one of which was that thriller down at the Park of Scarlets, the wheels came off in grand style. I mean, to be fair, it's probably one that they can park pretty quickly because they won't be the first or the last team to go there and have 50 points put on them. But it was as bad as it sounds, and could even have been worse, I think.
Yeah, in an international window, going away to a team whose back five in the pack was Devon Toner, Scott Fardy. We had Reece Ruddock, who's playing out of his skin. Penny, who we're not allowed to talk about Penny today, Sean. We've spent enough time. And Dan Levy coming back. I mean, that's a hell of a back five during an international window playing away from home.
Then I'm sick of talking about Leinster. Just the depth and everything. I mean, they're too complete, and it's incredible.
So one of the things we've seen Harry Byrne come through. Ross Byrne's younger brother. He's playing very, very nicely, and some wonderful range to his passing, and his kicking game is really nice. So a lot of people are very excited. But what we're going to do now is spend a minute or two, Sean, talking about someone else you picked out, which is Ciaran Frawley, who is a fly half and has played a lot of fly half for Leinster, but he's now lining up at 12 and doing pretty well. Yeah,
this guy first came to my mind when I commentated last year, about this time last year, maybe earlier. Leinster against Ospreys, 50 points. He was playing at 10. I just like his balance, and I just think he runs very well. Look, he's got a real nice step on him. He's strong. He's not overly quick, but he's got lovely feet on him. This obviously playing 10, great distributor. If he's playing a 10 for Leinster, he's got a good head in him and he can run a game. And he's been playing a lot at 12, So I quite like that second 10, second receiver. If you imagine you've got Burn, one of the Burns there, and then this kid at outside. Look, he's got a lovely step and fence, strong. So to say, not overly quick, but I've likened him. I'm watching these clips. Look at that offload. He's a little bit James Hook-like to me. Here's the second lot now where he's got in a 12 jersey on and he's hungry. Look, playing second receiver, can come in on this little wrap play. Or scissors, as I used to call it many years ago, and runs a good line, lovely steps, big strong boy. So he's got a little bit of James Hook about me. Look at that, that's just good change of direction, isn't it? At pace, and the fact that he can distribute. And I think on the weekend he kicked some goals as well. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe Harry Byrne went off a little bit later on, but coming up here is going to be another look at this offload and have a look how dirty this is. Oh, out the back door, falling down. But you know what I like about it? I don't know if we can watch it again, is that Luke McGrath actually calls for that. So that tells me that this kid, Frawley, does it in training. Look at the way he's carrying the ball. So that shows he's looking for that little out the side door. Look at the way he carries it. And we're going to see it again. Watching on McGrath, right? He'll follow in and he'll call because he knows this kid does it. Just watch McGrath coming out in the backdrop. Look, he'll give a little call. Yeah, there's the call. Oh, thank you very much. That's stinking. Absolutely love it. Watch this kid. Watch Ciaran Frawley. Another one off the conveyor belt.
Yeah, it is good. The one when you're talking about his feet going into contact, one player who was very, very good at that little double skip was Gordon Darcy. At times, he used to bring it into contact and both feet going at the same time. It's really, really good with the right player. But that little bit of filth with that offload, there's a delicacy to that, which to have it float into someone's hand, it's not a fling. It was absolutely brilliant. But it wasn't the most skillful thing we saw this weekend. What was the most skillful thing we saw this weekend, Dean Budd?
Pierre Bruno. He just needs a little what do they call a little tutu on it, like a little ballet dancer.
Can we describe for anyone who's listening back on the pod, right? I know isn't even watching the clips and he didn't see the game of the weekend. What does he do?
Oh, I think, what is that, a 540 almost? He's gone round 1.5 times with the right hand ball on his hip, off a kick. Absolutely phenomenal. One of the best finishers, I think. I mean, not the most exciting try in the world, but the skill to remain somewhat composed. Give him a bit of credit to say he's composed at that moment, but to keep that ball on the hip and get it down, pretty special try.
It was great. It was great watching the referee as well, because he's looking at you can see him looking at the screen going. Yeah.
He didn't want to give a try there.
There must be some reason I have to disallow this. There's no reason. I'm giving a try. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Before we get to
that's about all there was to offer from Zebra in that game. Turn to the Kotsia podcast.
It was a very, very large Ulster away win. I think their third biggest ever in European or Guinness PRO14 action. Mark, before we go into just running through the fixtures for next weekend for the Guinness PRO14, Nathan Chamberlain. Is this a bright spark to talk about if you're talking about Scottish club rugby?
Hopefully, he's come in with a very big reputation from the under-20s, but at the moment, he's looking what he is. A guy who's played not a lot of senior rugby, not a lot of men's rugby, and he was brought in as a third choice standoff this year to go in under Van der Vault and John O'Lance. John O'Lance couldn't get a visa, so then suddenly now with Jaco Van der Vault off married and back in South Africa and potentially then being involved with Scotland, he's been thrust in to start. So he does look necessarily pretty callow, but you can see that he's got good basic skills. What you can hear, what you hear from about how he is off the pitch as well, good attitude, learning well from the more senior players there at Edinburgh. But it's probably symptomatic of where they are this season. Both teams are going to find it a real struggle. There's not much depth there. Edinburgh used to only get hit by forward absentees are now losing half the back line as well, particularly in that back three. So some real challenges to plug gaps and keep the whole show on the road.
Right. Is there any other bright sparks to talk about for Glasgow and Edinburgh?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. As I say, I think it was always going to be a tough season for them with the volume of test players that there aren't at both, and how often they're going to be absent this year. And Glasgow's recruitment, maybe over a number of years, hasn't been brilliant at adding that sort of depth and that second layer. So I think Danny Wilson's inherited a really probably difficult position there, and also coming in the middle of a pandemic wouldn't have helped. But I think that we'll have to really sort of temper expectations for both of them this year, which, and particularly from an Edinburgh point of view, is disappointing given what they achieved last season. But I think it's going to be very, very hard to replicate that, or even close.
We will look forward to the next weekend. We have our test matches, one fewer. If you didn't tune in at the very start of the show, Fiji's 29 COVID cases have ruled them out of playing against Italy, and we'll see where that story goes, but it's fresh off the presses tonight as we record. Plenty of Guinness PRO14 action coming up. Monday Night Rugby continues. How do we feel about Monday Night Rugby, by the way? We did touch on it a few weeks back. How's it going for you, Dean, as the former player?
I enjoyed it. I didn't have much on my plate last night, so to have 2.5 games, couldn't watch two at once, but it was a good watch, and it was I've never been so sported out of my life as I was this weekend. I had the Masters going basically the entire weekend on my little iPad, and then rugby game after rugby game going on the telly. I think tomorrow it's a real detox moment for me, because I've never been exposed to that much sport in my life.
Mark, but you're biased, Holley. You're biased. You're working the games, right? Mark, as a journalist, how does the extension of the working weekend suiting you?
It's good. An 8:15 kickoff, I don't think, is particularly appreciated by those in charge of deadlines, but that's by the by. But I think it's for the Scottish. Danny, if you ask Danny Wilson and Richard Cockrell, I think they might have a very different view, in that they're really suffering from not being able to get any Scotland players back, because Scotland's big training days at the start of the week are Monday and Tuesday. So necessarily Gregor wants to keep hold of as many players as possible. So there's been a real issue about guys then coming back into the fold for a Monday game. So in what was already, as we've been explaining there, a complicated scenario for those coaches, it's added another layer of difficulty.
It is. So let's run through the from John Roddy. John Roddy's buying into the super producer Adam way of getting your comment in. Was an excuse to have some Guinness on a Monday night. This is oh yes, Ian Gilbert, oh yes, a real pint of Guinness. Stephen Sheridan, what have you done?
Well, I've moved from my cup of tea as we're past 10 o'clock to sláinte.
Oh, it's actually pretty good. Right, here we go. We got James O'Driscoll marching with Henshaw out injured. I'd like to see McCluskey at 12 and Aki at 13 against England. What do you guys think?
I like McCluskey. I think he's much more. There's more about him than he's just a big guy who trucks it up. At 12, I think he's got more football than that. However, he hasn't had an opportunity really on the biggest stage to give it a crack. So I agree with James. I'd like to see him in there just to see if he's an option. You got a couple of guys out injured. Aki's the sort of guy you probably need against England, isn't he? So we'll have to see what the options are there. I go back to what I said about Ireland. Will the real Ireland turn up? I think you'd get a better idea from a Leinster team. So that's the template for me. Is what they're gonna. I know they got more guys to pick from, but they need to decide how they want to play and put sides away. They're gonna really need to come up with something different to break that England defence. I think it's very aggressive. The line speed is really quick. Big guys. So McCluskey and Aki, they might be the ticket.
Ewan Davis. Italy looked like improving. looks like could build really well about Bradley, Varney and Gray Beasy together and build a team around them. Dean, wrong about Varney too. Winky face.
I'm not sure I was wrong. I said that he would be in the fold in the coming weeks, that he had been in the camp for some time, needed to blood him in, give him his time to learn the language of plays. I thought I nailed that. I was really confident with myself.
You got away with that.
But clearly I got it wrong.
Alexander Cameron, it's good that Weir can score points, but if Van der Vaart can get into the Scotland squad, he would be my 10 and Weir the 12. Mark.
Wow, that's an interesting one. Not one I don't think I'd ever considered before. They tried it obviously with Finn Russell and Adam Hastings as a 10-12 combination, but that's maybe a slightly different combination with different skill sets than those two. But yeah, it could be. It was depending on where we get to in the autumn.
You're too nice a guy, Mark. That's horse shit, isn't it? I mean, come on. Scotland have got so many good centres, haven't they? Come on. They've got a load they can pick from. Poor old Duncan Weir. Let's leave him alone. We're taking the mickey out of him now.
Wow, poor old Alexander Cameron getting absolutely mullered. When is Van der Vaart Scotland qualified? He's qualified now, isn't he?
As of yesterday, yes. So
yeah.
Yeah.
He had to be in isolation coming back from South Africa, didn't he?
Yeah, so if he's made to do the full 2 weeks, I think he got back last Sunday, so his last day of isolation would be the day of the French game, so obviously he would have no preparation time. And so the more obvious one would have been the Fiji game the following week, which now looks like it may not happen. So maybe just the final against England the following week is going to be Van der Vaart's debut.
Harley Worthy asks, if there's time to answer this, Sean, how annoyed would you be to find out hours before a game that a player in your starting 15 was being called up to the national team?
That's a good question, Harley. Thank you. I'd like to think that you're in a position where you sort of get a feeling, guys have been watched, or you get a heads up, not necessarily the week, but with injuries and that. So what you have is a contingency. You've got a couple of guys, 24th, 25th guys. You will train them in the week just in case, always, because you can get thunderbolts. Dean will tell you somebody will go down in the warm-up. I can remember James Hook going down in a warm-up against Perpignan in the Heineken Cup. And we ended up with the full bench, all forwards. Zero back cover. And Rhys Webb and Dan Bigger were 19-year-old playing 9 and 10 against Perpignan, the French champions. And we won 15-9, but thunderbolts can happen. So you got to be well prepped. I would be philosophical about Harley. I'd be congratulated. It's James Botham is the question. He got called up late to the Wales squad. But the boy, James Ratty, went really well for the Blues. So, it's another chance for another guy.
Johan Davis again. Could Lane be good for Wales at 13? Not on the same level yet, but England have big, strong, fast Tuolangi. France have Bakatawa. Ireland have either Henshaw or Aki or Chris Farrell.
He's played there as a kid. See, he played there as a kid, and I agree. I think he could. Jonathan Davis is injured. We might be tempted to move Owen Watkin out there, but I think this kid, we need pace in that area and big, strong ball carry, good defender, and he's all that. So why not?
Okay, Johan, not horseshit. Apparently, that's good.
Which you clearly can say.
Oh well, I'm offended anyway.
Which we clearly can say on this podcast right now. Okay, fixtures for the weekend. We've gone through the test matches. We have on Sunday 1:45 Ospreys against Benetton, followed by Zebre Connacht, Leinster against Cardiff Blues, Ulster and Scarlets 7:35 p.m. to round off the Sunday, and then Monday Night Rugby, Glasgow Warriors against Munster. Munster going for their best start to a Guinness PRO14 season since 2008. Quick wrap through the conferences. Leinster and Ulster are steaming ahead in Conference A. Leinster 6 wins on the bounce and 6 bonus point wins on the bounce. Ulster also 6 wins, only 4 bonus points. Shocking. Munster played 5, won 5, 22 points. It's a lot tighter in Conference B. Cardiff 14, Scarlets 14. They both played 6 games though. We've a long season to go. All right. I think we can wrap this up. Thank you everybody for joining the show. Thank you, Dean, for telling us about your flexibility. Thank you, Sean, for your shameless product placement. Thank you, Mark Palmer of the Sunday Times, for making us forget about anybody called Paul Williams. Thank you, Adam Revenant, for producing. Thanks. It's always a great show, and we love having everyone along for the ride. That was Under the Sticks, brought to you by Pro14 Rugby. My name is Andy McGeady. We'll talk to you soon.
They call me cheetah. Ooh, cheetah. I love my cheetah.